You're listening to the King of the Fourth podcast, offering in-depth analysis on all things Boston Celtics, with your hosts, Jim and Mike Quigley.
It's Monday morning, the day after the overtime loss in Game 4 to the Philadelphia 76ers. As usual, I'm Jim Quigley along with my brother Michael, and we're here on the day after the hangover to what was a frustrating loss after an inspiring comeback. And before that, a lackluster defensive effort really for three quarters. Mike, I'm just going to start with the end of the game stuff. There's a lot to get into here. But those two sequences at the end of the game, starting with, Jason Tatum hits that big three to put the Celtics up 2. Doc Rivers calls a timeout. They go to Embiid, as you would expect. And, Tatum's matched up against him. It started with Smart. They switch. They go to Tatum. And it's a good matchup for Philly, for sure. But the Celtics had help coming from the weak side, where Embiid was, making his move. And then obviously the nightmare scenario happened where Jaylen Brown helps off the strong side, something you should never do. It helps off the strong side corner in the NBA, which is something you should never, ever do. Never mind in a 2-point game with 30 seconds to go in the Eastern Conference semifinals. They shouldn't be helping off any three-point shooters in that situation. Worst case scenario, Embiid makes a shot, and you got a chance in the last shot of double overtime to win. But Brown helps. Embiid fails to help because he's an excellent player and gets the ball to the corner, and it's James Harden, who's the hottest man on earth at that point, hit the shot to force overtime, makes a three. And then, from there, Mike, we get the Celtics on offense. And I don't know if you want to take it from there and give your perspective on what happens next, but obviously, not good.
Well, what happens next is Mazzulla was trusting them to go down and make a play. But what pisses me off is that you have Marcus Smart at the top of the key just dribbling the clock down. At some point as a coach, you're going to step in and stop that and help your team. They looked they looked very disorganized. They didn't look confident. A big shot just happened. You're on the road. You have 2 timeouts, so you can use one and take a look and use the second one. The whole thing was just bizarre to me. And then the biggest difference for me was at the end of the game, Jaylen Brown, takes credit for the loss. When he comes in and he's saying, yeah, that's my fault, that's on me. And then you talk about accountability for your coach. He's up there saying, I wouldn't change anything. I wouldn't change anything. We got 2 good shots off. Dude, you didn't get a shot off in overtime. You didn't get a shot off. That's the point. Your team didn't even get a shot off down by 1. And you didn't do anything to help make it better. So he's sitting there like, oh, everything's fine. Everything's fine. It's like, no, you're part of the reason why they lost. You are. Your players didn't do the right thing. They didn't play with pace and react well enough. But as a coach with 2 timeouts, you're hired to help them. That's your job. And this guy doesn't take accountability for anything.
You're exactly right with just the end of the game. They had the 2 timeouts. I guess I understand it to some point of why you're hoping they got to move fast, but it was clear. It was clear almost immediately that wasn't going to happen. And then with about 12 seconds left, they're not. And, they're basically getting set up and whatever. It looks like they want to run double horns or whatever. And, it's slowly happening. You can see it in real time. You watch him on the sideline. He's not even motioning to his team to get going. Never mind looking at the ref to use a timeout. And the thing that's so frustrating to me is that this has happened twice during the regular season. This happened against Miami and it happened against the Knicks, where, you have the almost exact same situation where time is running down and, Mazzulla's letting them go. And it's clear that they're not going fast enough. So the players, on one hand, didn't learn from their mistakes and stopped moving faster. The coach has not learned from his, and it is not getting a sense from his team and being able to call, a quick timeout when he realizes they're not moving like they should. And you end up getting to a point where, Tatum doesn't really even begin to make his move until it's under 5 seconds to go. And he ends up, attempting that pass to Smart with under 2 seconds. I mean, that's going to be his awareness there to get a shot off. But it just, what you're trying to do at that point is stretch the game out. You're trying to stretch the game out as much as you can. And you had 19 seconds to get a quick shot off. And then even when you noticed, it wasn't working, it was still like 12, 13 seconds to go. You could have banged a timeout then, got a quick shot, maybe left 6, 7, 5 seconds on the clock, still fouled, and at worst case scenario had a chance for the 3 at the end of the game with your remaining timeout. Instead, as you point out, they did not get a shot off. Smart's shot was after the whistle, so it doesn't count. They did not get a shot off, and I just don't know how that can happen. It's almost improbable with 19 seconds to go that you do not get a shot off, down 1. And that's the other thing too, Mike. They're not down 2, they're not down 3, they're down 1. And it just leaves so many options of what you can do offensively, especially if you bang a quick timeout. You can look to get Tatum in the high post and have him make a move, try to get a foul, or he could dish off when help comes. It's okay to shoot a 3 in that situation. It's almost good to. And the other, the rationale I keep seeing online, Michael, and I don't know if you saw this too, but people are saying, Doc would then be able to sub in his good defenders. It's leaving out the fact that Doc had no timeouts left. So Doc would have had to make a choice to either take out Maxey, maybe put in Melton, or, if you want to take out Harden. But if he does that and the Celtics score, he has 2 of his top offensive players out of the game. And he can't get them in. I don't think, I've been watching Doc forever. There's no way Doc would make that choice. So I just sit here, and the fact that Philly had no timeouts, you had 2, 19 seconds to go, you want to extend this to at least 2 possessions. In reality, you might even get 3 out of it if you work it right. And, it's almost no difference than a 2-for-1 at the end of the game, at the end of the quarter. I just don't know how they didn't. It's the players are at fault for not moving fast and then not seeing the clock and getting a shot off. There's accountability there. But it's more on the coach, where you're not seeing this happening. They're obviously a little shell-shocked from the 3-pointer that just happened. Your best player made a mistake, or your second best player. You could possibly even drop a play for him to have him redeem himself. You see that happen all the time in the NBA. And instead, you become a spectator, just a spectator at the end of that game. And to your point, where there's no accountability, the last thing I'll say on it, Mike, is, we all work with these type of people that are really talented and very smart, right? But they get into a point where they have ideas that might not be functioning as well as they hope they are, or they're planned out well, but at the end of the day, they just don't, for whatever reason, they don't execute. And they want to continue to push that same idea because of a stubbornness, instead of adapting and putting in different variables. This is a guy that has saw this not work twice during the regular season. And we got to the postseason, and it's happening again, and it's something he should have learned from. But I'm sitting here wondering, is this a stubbornness thing to show that he was right? Instead of, saying, oh shit, this isn't working again, I better use one here and give my team the 2 chances that it needs to try to, win this game of ascended to OT. And I just, I don't know what's worse. I don't know what worse, where if he just doesn't recognize it and it's a mistake again, which I don't think it is. Or if it's a stubbornness thing, which I do think it is. And I just find that I find that to be inexcusable. I find that to be inexcusable at this time of the season with a championship caliber team. Like he's trying to prove a point about the type of coach he is. And I'm sorry, this is not the time to do it. And instead of being 3-1, oh, and who knows, the Celtics could have missed shots and not won, and it's still 2-2. But so I'm going to rephrase this. Instead of giving a team a chance, you didn't give them any.
Yeah, I think you covered it, Jim. There were mental lapses by the Celtics. Jaylen Brown leaving Harden wide open in the corner. I think even switching Tatum on the Embiid, I don't think you had to do that. You could have fought through that, but at the end of the day, the Celtics had a shot still. They were scoring the ball pretty good the fourth quarter and on in that game. And there were just so many big plays made by the Celtics to get back into that. So many feel-good moments that you just had a feeling the Celtics were going to figure it out. But they just didn't have the chance to. And you can blame the players too. They obviously just fell apart on that last possession. If they didn't have a timeout left, we would have been getting on the players like, what the hell are you doing? I think the fact that they had 2 timeouts left, it's fair to say to Mazzulla, this one's on you too. You lost this game. Not sure why Tatum's passing in that situation. I know Embiid's there, but there's no time left. You just got to put your body into him and try to score. Or, he might have had better passing options too, with White at the top of the key earlier in the shot clock for a better look. Al was in the corner. That might have been an easier pass. That took less time. But at the end of the day, it's just another example of this team in a close game kind of falling apart. And it's unfortunate because I think we could really say in this series, the Celtics, had they just shown up defensively in game 1 and put in a little bit more effort, they would have won that game. And if the coach stepped in and called a timeout, if Jaylen Brown didn't leave his man, there's a good chance they would have won last night. And instead of a 4-game sweep, we may be looking at a 7-game series. And yes, I think the Celtics have clearly identified with I think they're like a plus 100 in this series, that they're the better team. But you get to a 1-game situation like a game 7, guy like Joel Embiid could end your season. Guy like James Harden has shown you twice what he can do when he gets hot. So these blown opportunities, I hope they don't catch up to the Celtics, because moving forward, I still think the Celtics are the better team. I would not be surprised if they won the next 2 games. They've already won 2 games in a row in this series quite handily when they played pissed off. I think another thing I'm somewhat let down by from this team is I don't think the intensity that we saw in games 2 and 3 were there until the fourth quarter last night. I thought they played with good energy, but they didn't play with great energy in quarters 1, 2, and 3. I don't know. And I think that part of the reason they were down. Their shots were short. They weren't long when they were missing, like in games 2. And I know you brought that up in earlier pods. So, again, moving forward, I think the Celtics are still the better team. I think adjustments, it's tough to say what adjustments they should make, because I don't think James Harden goes off if Jaylen Brown doesn't get 2 touch fouls called on him to start that game. Harden got hot when Brown went to the bench. That's when Harden took over. He literally started to get hot as soon as Brown went to the bench. I think Harden scored like 12 straight points. And before that, Harden wasn't scoring. And then you didn't really see Jaylen Brown on Harden again until the fourth quarter. And even then, they were still allowing other guys like Grant Williams and Brogdon and Smart to cover Harden, which to be honest, Jim, I didn't understand that. I didn't understand why there was anybody on Harden outside of Brown. Even on screens, I thought they should have fought through it and just cut Brown on. because he's the only guy in this series who has been able to show that he could actually shut him down. So I didn't understand. Brown wasn't in foul trouble anymore either. He still had 2 fouls going into the fourth quarter, and yet they were having all these go off. So I think the adjustments are going back to what works. Continue to play physical with Embiid, because in that third and fourth quarter, Embiid was not the same, and Al had shut him down. Rob had done a number on him. Embiid got his points, but it was the same old Joel Embiid. He was not effective in that fourth quarter. He was hesitant too, and he was tired defensively. So continue to play physical with him, and hopefully we can stay out of foul trouble. If the refs call the game and, Tatum and Brown are in foul trouble, and then things could get messy and they could lose. And that's what's so disappointing about this, is that I don't think we should be having games 5 and game 6 if the Celtics did their job. And now there's a lot of what ifs. Doc's at the podium complaining about the officiating. I have no idea if that causes any changes in game 5 and how it will be called. But this series has not been called favorably towards the Celtics, and that could be an impact. So let's see. At the end of the day, if the Celtics play with pace and space, they get up in guys, Brown's allowed to defend Harden, Grant, Al, and Rob are allowed to defend Embiid with a lot of physicality, the Celtics should win and win easily. But we'll see. The way the refs call the game could dictate things, like I do think it dictated yesterday.
Yeah, I don't think the refs have had a major impact. I thought early on, obviously, Jaylen got his 2. I don't think the Celtics just had the defensive intensity that really you needed, to match a desperate team until probably late in that third quarter. Offensively, they seem to have gotten going after halftime, but they didn't really come alive until, Rob came into the game late in that third. And then, you go into that fourth and Philly really struggled to score at all. I do have more second guesses and adjustments. I think Rob has to play more. I thought throughout the game, you were your really best version of the Celtics was when he was on the floor. I know, you kind of completed that comeback with Brogdon and Smart, and instead of going double bigs with Robin, but you got up 5. Philadelphia calls a timeout with a minute and a half to go, and you went, you kept the same lineup in there, and Philadelphia immediately gets 2 from a drive in Harden. You come down, and this would have been game. Al gets a great look, and it spins right around the hoop. Do you remember this, Mike? And it pops out, and Philadelphia gets a defensive rebound. From that point forward, by the way, you don't get an offensive rebound really the rest of the game. Then you come down, force a tough Embiid shot. He misses. It was an air ball. And Tucker grabs the offensive rebound. Brogdon does not box him out, and then Brogdon follows him, and we have a tie ball game. I just feel like in that spot with a minute and a half up 5, the offense did its job. You got them going. Now it's about getting starts in defensive rebounding. And I think that would have been a real good spot to get Rob back in that game. I don't think, especially if they're coming back out with Tucker, you can start him on Tucker where he basically stays in the corner and doesn't do anything else offensively. I mean, they could utilize a ball screen, but you can scramble out of that. If they see that coming, just switch Tucker before the screen happens and keep Rob in the corner. I just felt like, as well as he was playing defensively and really taking away any opportunities at the rim and taking away any second chance points. And then from there on out, it really was in overtime. Outside of that Harden 3, the only time they scored was off misses, meaning Philadelphia. It was continually second chance points. And I know the offense is really important there, but I also felt like the offense was fine when Rob was in there. How many times did Tatum drive and drop it down to him down the stretch? And I don't know. Maybe you put him in to win the jump ball and see if you can win the jump ball, get an extra possession in overtime. Maybe you sub him out after that. Maybe you put him back in with about 2 minutes to go. Again, even the last possession up to defensive possession, you could have had him in there just as an extra, interior defender. And you could tell everyone else, do not leave the shooters. Rob's the weak side help. No one leaves shooters. If they score, we got 2 timeouts and we can make the substitutions we need to get the offensive players back in there. And if Harden missed, do you have a lot of faith that 5 would have come up with the defensive rebound?
Not at all.
Yeah, so it's so that's a real second guess to me. Up until I don't know what the plus minus was for the players of the team at the end of the day, but with about 7 minutes left when he came out, he was the only plus player for the Celtics. And, in a game where their offense wasn't really getting going in that fourth quarter, they just missed open shots, if you remember. It was his defense and Tatum's defense that kept them afloat until the shots started knocking down. And to Mazzulla's credit, and that run with, 7 minutes to go, Brogdon made some shots. The floor spaced out, so it helped. But it doesn't mean you have to stay with him.
No. And you had opportunities
when you get the lead with under 2 minutes to go. You can make substitutions.
When they were up 5, I thought they should have went double big because they couldn't rebound.
Yeah,
and I see no issue with that with PJ Tucker on the floor, because that allows Rob to cheat and then recover on that corner 3. And if they're going to corner 3s in that situation with PJ Tucker, I think the Celtics could have lived with that. Instead, they went to Embiid and they went to Harden. Maybe Rob's there to protect the rim and not Marcus Smart when Harden's going to the hoop. The other thing is,
they did a good job on Embiid even without Rob, but they just needed someone there to rebound. That's it.
Yeah, the Celtics didn't rebound at all down the stretch. There's a lot of second guesses here.
And it squandered a really great second half from Jason Tatum. He was a complete no-show in the first half.
And Al Horford
and he did it all. He did it all. He scored. He realized his shot wasn't falling, so he went to the basket. He should have got to the line a lot more. He rebounded. He blocked shots. His defense was tremendous. He was making the right reads. I bet you he has like 4 or 5 hockey assists. And they just wandered really. Those last 24 minutes of the game, plus the 5 minutes in overtime, so 29 minutes, he was the best player on the floor. And so they squandered that as well.
Yeah, and they squandered Al's defense on Embiid.
Yeah.
That was a clinic in that fourth quarter. He absolutely just shut him down. I was stunned that they lost. I really was. When they went up 5, I thought it was over. Credit to Philly for not giving up. And game 5, Philly's
I thought this was a worse loss than game 1, Mike. I thought this was like I thought this was a good worse loss than game 1. I don't know how you feel, but I feel like game 1's kind of happened. Teams are feeling each other out. Maybe you don't take them as seriously as you should. You see that a lot in the NBA. It's not an excuse, but you see it a lot. So game 1's happened. This felt worse to me because, up 5 with a minute and a half on the road, you came back from 16 down. All you need is one more, big hoop or one more stop.
Yeah.
And you close this, and you got a chance to close this out on Tuesday night. And it was a combination of a lot of people not doing their job, whether it's getting the defensive rebound or making the right substitution, or fouling after not rebounding, or whatever it was. I felt like this was worse. I just felt like this was worse. Even making an open shot. How they under regulation, Smart's wide open and he front rims it. You got a chance to end the game, you got to do it. And I just felt like this one was, I don't know if you agree with that, but I felt like this one was worse.
Yeah, this one could be definitely more deflating. And that's why I think it's worse. They look deflated on that last possession. They look defeated during the post-game comments and at the pressers. I think Al, to me, was the only one that gave me hope. In his press conference, he seemed upbeat and ready for Game 5. I hope this doesn't carry over into Game 5. I hope the Celtics can't come out hungry and ready to go. I think Philly's going to be, I would expect and hope an early punch from the Celtics in Game 5. But I think Philly's coming in with some confidence now.
I know you do. You always think the other teams. Here's what I'll say. Every time the Celtics have really been in this spot in the playoffs.
I'm not done.
Okay.
The Celtics could still win this series in 6 games. You know, it may go 7, like last year in the second round. But it's just really irritating to continue to see this team put themselves in positions that they don't have to be in. Yeah. Over and over and over and over again. And I agree with you on Game 1. I was frustrated, but you're right. You do see it all the time. But Game 5 against Atlanta, and now this, last night, they're setting themselves up. It's like they keep playing with fire, and I don't understand. I don't understand why this continues to happen at the end of close games in the playoffs with the Celtics.
And I think the other big difference between Game 1 and this and Game 5 in Atlanta and last night is like they played well last night. Mm-hmm. They played well throughout so much of it. They played well throughout so much of crunch time on offense. Outside of that, last possession of overtime, even the last possession of regulation, it was run perfectly. You want to get a shot off and leave no time for Philadelphia, and you want a good shot. And they did it. Like they executed really, really well, and then they wouldn't get a defensive rebound. Like they played really good defense without fouling. And then they wouldn't get a defensive rebound, and then they would foul. They throughout the entire overtime, really dug in on both ends. And then you leave to double when their doubling was so good. So good. How they used their doubles on Embiid throughout the fourth quarter and the overtime. And then they screw it up in the worst possible time. It's just like, I felt like in those Atlanta games in Game 1 in Philadelphia, it never felt like they were playing that great, right? You watched it and you didn't, their offense for the last 3 minutes against Atlanta was like, holy shit. Their offense the last 2 minutes against Philadelphia was like, holy shit, this is bad. They're trying to lose this game. This was different. They did so much well, and yet still found a way to kick it away. They go into Game 6. I'm hoping for a repeat of history, what we've seen from the Celtics in the playoffs. Whenever if
it's a repeat of history, Jim, they'll lose in Game 5, and they're going to have to win Game 6 on the road. So I'm really hoping it's not a repeat of history.
Oh, because you're talking Milwaukee last year, but for the most part,
I'm hoping they win Game 5.
When this team has had a real disappointed loss, outside of what happened Game 4 in Golden State, they have rebounded, and when they've lost a game they should have won, I'll say they have rebounded and taken control. You saw that Game 6 in Milwaukee. You saw that all throughout the Miami series, and you saw that against Atlanta, and you've seen that here early in this series. So my expectation is they're going to come back and play a really good game tomorrow night. And they're also the better team, and we'll see if Harden has another game like that in him. I didn't think he had a second game like that in him, and he did. So, I'm not going to rule that out anymore. But if they come out with the defensive intensity that they need to have, they should beat this team no problem. Because offensively, for the most part, and Philadelphia's a good defensive team, don't get me wrong, they get what they want. They just have so many weapons that they get what they want. And so, there are some possessions that, don't look right, and you would hope for a better shot. But for the most part, you don't look at this and say, wow, they're not getting enough open looks. You never say that about the Celtics. So they'll get the shots. They just need to be better. They need to be better defensively, and they need to be better early in the game of not turning the ball over. They had 6 at halftime. I don't know what they had total to end the game, but it felt a lot better. If they did have turnovers, they felt like dead ball turnovers. I don't Mike, maybe I'm losing my mind, but I don't really remember any killer live ball turnovers that the Celtics had. Either Philadelphia too, by the way, protected the ball really well. But so we'll see. We'll see, and you tip your cap to Philly too, because their 2 best players really did show up and played well and gave them a shot to win. I still believe that the Celtics going to win. I believe it's going to be in 6. I haven't seen enough from Philadelphia to make me change that. If anything, I've seen more from the Celtics to make me want to change that. But I'm still going to stick with the Celtics in 6. That's how I felt at the beginning of the series. That's where I land still right now. What about you?
Oh, that was a lot. Jim, I think they're going to win the series, and I blame this last loss on Mazzulla. So this, in my mind, we were worried about, is there going to be a game where he costs them? I was very confident that the Celtics were going to come down and score on that last possession, and I thought he should have done something about it, and he didn't. Yeah. So I put it on him. And my only concern moving forward is close games against Philly down the stretch. What's it going to look like? What's the coaching going to look like in those situations? And can he fuck them again? So we'll see. But go Celtics, Game 5 Tuesday night, big game at home. And I expect the Celtics to come out playing hard defense and taking control of the series again. So we'll see.
Hey, before we go, I want to just get your thoughts on the Jokic Suns owner situation. Did you see that?
I kind of saw it. I heard Jokic say in the presser that he touched me first.
Yeah. The Suns owner is a clown.
Yeah, I would hate to see this guy get suspended.
Yeah.
The real thing about that series is just what Devin Booker's shooting numbers are off the charts. I mean, he's shooting like 70% from the floor.
Yeah, he's been unbelievable.
It's incredible stuff. And then what Jokic is doing, and even Durant the last 2 games, it's hard to say who's going to win that series. I go with Denver because of the home court advantage. I think it's so hard to play there. And Phoenix clearly is a different team when you can breathe correctly. But yeah, those 2 teams are locked in. Jamal Murray's playing at a high level. I think that the West has 4 teams that are all very good right now. But I think the East has 2, and they're playing each other, the Celtics and Philly. But I think all 4 of those teams could win the championship out West.
Yeah, this Denver series it's an old school NBA series where, the stars are just rising to the occasion at home.
Mm-hmm.
And
Booker is rising to the occasion no matter where he plays.
Yeah, I guess Booker and Jokic are, right? As far as that incident goes, I mean, like, he's coming over to get the ball. The guy who's not the owner, like, swings the ball away from him. The owner's like up in Jokic's grill. Like, I get Jokic isn't supposed to go near that area at all. It's also like, you're the owner. Have some fucking decorum. Now you've made yourself the story, and you flop like that. Like, you're a clown. You are a clown. And it's just a reminder that these billionaires are not as savvy or as smart or as sophisticated as we think they are. Sometimes they're just tech bros that get lucky, and sometimes they're just a member of the Lucky Sperm Club, and they're able to, take advantage of daddy's billions to buy a toy sports franchise, and they're a bunch of dipshits. A lot of them, you saw that down the stretch with Dallas and Mark Cuban. So I don't know. Like, if the league suspends Jokic, it's just, it would just be the dumbest thing I've ever, they could, I don't think there's any way they're going to, I don't know how you suspend that. And then earlier in the playoffs,
Jim,
Embiid stomps a guy and you don't do anything. So,
yeah, the league has done it though. I mean, they suspended Amari Stoudemire for stepping on the court.
Yep, they did.
And I thought that was ridiculous and cost the Suns. So,
yep.
If the league wants to see Kevin Durant in the NBA Finals and not Jokic, and they're going to step in and make sure that happens.
That was pre Adam Silver. That was David Stern. So hopefully, hopefully cooler heads prevail there. I think that would it'd be an awful look for the league, especially when one of your board of governors, is involved in this and looks like an idiot. And, I just think it would be an awful, awful look. Mike, I know we both got to get to work. Not a great Monday morning, but at least they're still playing, and we'll see how it goes.